Well, I ended up with a 5-gallon bucket. Got some other ingredients out of the garden. I use the smaller onions because they're a lot easier for me to process. My wife doesn't really like to use them. Got some basil, fresh basil, some peppers, and a couple different varieties of tomatoes. The paste tomato here on the right has a nice thick wall. This is a celebrity, I believe, on the left here. It's going to produce a lot of meat too. This enormous onion is actually left over from last year. I dried my onions on a little rack, and this one was small and fell through. And it's from last year. It's going to produce 2 bulbs, but want not, waste not. Waste not, want not. Something like that. Time for me. Well, I've spent the last several minutes cutting these tomatoes up, and this is the result of a 5-gallon bucket. And then we have the waste. Good day to be a chicken on the Satchwell farm. This will all be take this down to the chicken coop, and they'll dig through that and there will be nothing left by this evening. Next part of the process is to cook these down a bit. Just need to get them softened up so I can run them through my mill. I'm going to do one of the processing out here on the gas stove. But for this first process, all I need to do is soften these up so I can run them through the mill. That'll take about 20 to 30 minutes. All in told, this was going to be a 2-day process for me. I'm going to try to make the sauce today and can it tomorrow. It's a lot of trouble, but I know where these tomatoes came from. I know exactly what they've been sprayed with, which is nothing. And I just enjoy it. There's no added liquid in here, so I'm going to have to stir these quite often. This is a new grill, and today it is impossible to see that the flame, so I really don't know how high it is, but I want it on its lowest possible setting. It's important to do this step in all the processing in stainless steel. Don't do it in aluminum. It'll make your tomatoes, it'll react with the tomatoes and throw the taste off. Well, it's been about a half an hour and these tomatoes are looking great. I'm going to add my onions, peppers, and basil leaves in here and get run through the food mill. So I'm going to let my vegetables go ahead and soak in here until they're soft, and then we'll run everything through the mill. The smaller pan that was on the stove is turned off. It's ready to go, but you can see these tomatoes are peeling and they're cooked through. I'm going to leave the lid off now so that some of this water can evaporate. We're not going to be canning that water. We're going to get it down to a pretty thick sauce. Well, it's late afternoon. I've had a busy day. My wife and I took about 5 truckloads of what we affectionately call Pooh Mountain, the pile of manure from the horses, up into the woods today. This tomatoes are ready to start processing. This is my wife's old food processor. Bless her heart, she canned so many tomatoes with this. You pour the tomatoes in here and then you work through this. But I tell you, to be honest, we were so dirt poor when the kids were young that this is all we could afford. I've seen these at Goodwill and places like that, and I'm sure people have no clue what they are. But folks of my generation and before knew exactly what they are. Well, as soon as we could afford it, I bought one of these. This is a vegetable food mill strainer, and it works great. So I'm going to assemble this and get ready to process these tomatoes a little bit further. Lehman's catalog is probably the best place to get these, and I'll put a link to their website in the description. So that's it, and here's how it works. I love it. I've got my tomatoes in here. I'm going to put them in the cone and start cranking. So once I've cored our I didn't peel the tomatoes. I took out the bad spots. I took out the core, the little end where it grows out of the plant. And what this will do now, all of the juices and stuff, once this gets flowing, will come out the side there. It'll take the onion skins and it'll mince all this stuff up, and the discharge will go into the little round place I have there. I'm going to crank on this a few minutes and I'll show you exactly what's happening. I like doing this outside because it is a bit of a mess. So here comes the paste, and the skins and seeds are discharging out to the other side. This is real speed. My wife just went by and asked me why I wanted her old processor. I wanted to show folks how they did it in the old days, and she said she would probably still use it over this. And she would kill me if I put her on camera. So, in fact, there's been a couple of times, because of the way the schedule works out with my travel and the tomatoes, where she has canned, and she did all the canning when the kids were young. We have 6 children, and at that time I probably was working 3 or 4 jobs all the time. It was important to us that we had a stay-at-home mom, and she was a miracle mom. And if my kids don't give her a thumbs up, I'm going to be very disappointed, because she did all the canning and a lot of the gardening in the summer. And now it's not canning out of necessity like it was then. It's canning because of the quality of food. So the kids had great food, didn't have a lot of great vacations. Well, I was just saying, we didn't have a lot of extra spending money, but thankfully they all turned out okay. My iPad suddenly went off as I was filming there. It said emergency. It had gotten too hot out here in the afternoon Georgia sun. So it is warm. The bees have found me now, but I'm almost finished. I do want to share with you a little trick that my friend Marge Helms shared with me. I'm going to run this pile of stuff through the mill again. She said there's some goodness still there. And in fact, she's the one that introduced me to this type of a mill. So we're going to get all the goodness out of there we can. And what's left is going to be chicken food. And you could just as well, if you don't have chicken, send it to the compost pile. Well, this is what the food mill processed out. And this is the paste we're starting with. Just taste it. It's tasted really good right now. You can taste it. I think the pepper's just right, the onion's just right. So we'll add some more ingredients, but first I'm going to let it cook down. We're going to reduce this by almost half. It's canning time. Everything is set, ready to go. These glasses, these jars have been it just came out of the dishwasher, and even though the washer is probably sterile, I'm sterilizing them again in this boiling water. So this process is pretty straightforward. I'm going to fill these jars. Even though this just came out, I want to sterilize it as well. So, this is my pizza sauce. It's really thick and it makes a mess. I just dripped it all over the stove. Thank you, sorry for that. I use these little jars because it's the majority of the time it's just pizza for my wife and myself. So these little jars will make 2 pieces. My wife doesn't like to put a lot of sauce on it. Alright, now you need to make sure that this rim is completely clean, and these are. If they're not, you can just wipe them off. And I used to have a little magnet thing that I picked these jars up, or caps up with, but it doesn't seem to be where it belongs. So, these are going to go on here. And I'm going to have to go find my magnet, because these things are hot. And while everything is warm, I'm going to screw these lids on. And they'll be ready to go into the canner. All right, on to the next step. I've got the canner here, has some boiling water in it. The jars are in there. I've got some more to set on here, but I don't think there's enough water in there to do a double layer. Home canning can be dangerous. I'm going to set my timer here for 15 minutes, and it's a nice gentle rolling boil here. But again, this is what I do. The way you have been told or recommended to can may be different. Here in Georgia, I'm at 1,000 feet elevation, so I don't have to time it for extra elevation time. I went ahead and tried that extra layer, and it worked out. You need about 1 inch over the jars, and with the displacement, that's exactly what happened. So I'm going to keep an eye on this, leave it boil in there. You don't need a really hard boil, but you do need a good boil. And we're going to let this go for 15 minutes. By the time I get the second layer out and everything, it'll be about 18 to 20 minutes. And that's the processing I always use. I've had food like this keep for a couple of years. This will be consumed within a year, so I have no worries for me. But then again, that's just me. It's time. So these are going to come out. And with any luck, you'll start hearing some popping noises. They make a special lifter for these jars. I've never had one. This extra large set of tongs we use a lot for everything, and they work real handy for this. Now if they don't pop, that means they're not sealed, not safe. This actually goes to our pressure canner, and I could have pressure canned these, but I didn't. Water bath has always been enough, although I should have heard some popping by now. On a cooler day, they would have. Sealing. It's a very distinct sound.